I am Dr. Sarah Morgan, 34 years old, and I have a secret that would make my family's jaws drop to the floor. While my sister Victoria sees me as the perpetual student who can barely afford rent on my studio apartment, I just received the final payment for selling my biotech company to Pfizer for $847 million. Yesterday, when Victoria announced to our cousin's entire wedding reception that I was too broke for the family reunion, my phone rang with my pilot saying, "Dr. Morgan, your jet is fueled and ready for departure to Boston whenever you are." What my family doesn't understand is that sometimes the person they think has the least money actually has the most. They just value privacy over performance. Before I tell you how this revelation unfolded and why I've been hiding my success from my own family for years, let me ask you something. Have you ever been written off by people who couldn't see your potential? Have you ever let others underestimate you while you quietly built an empire they couldn't imagine? Hit that like button if you've ever been called a dreamer by people who didn't understand your vision, and subscribe because what happened at that family reunion will restore your faith in the power of education, innovation, and letting your success speak louder than their assumptions. The foundation of misunderstanding to understand how my own sister could be so spectacularly wrong about my financial situation, you need to know the story of the Morgan family dynamics that shaped both our paths. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, where my father built a successful investment firm and my mother perfected the art of social climbing through charity galas and country club politics. Old money traditions, new money ambitions, and an obsession with appearances defined everything about our household. Victoria, 2 years older than me, embraced the family blueprint perfectly. She attended the right preparatory schools, majored in art history at Vassar, married Bradford Whitmore III during her junior year, and settled into a life of managing their family's real estate portfolio while hosting elaborate dinner parties. Victoria understands how to build upon family success, my mother would say proudly. She's expanding our social connections and maintaining our reputation in the community. I, on the other hand, was the family anomaly who showed more interest in science textbooks than society pages. While Victoria was learning to navigate charity committees and yacht club hierarchies, I was building chemistry sets in the basement and reading medical journals I borrowed from my pediatrician during routine checkups. Sarah is very academic, my mother would tell her friends with the same tone she might use to describe an unfortunate medical condition. We're not sure where she gets it from. The implication was clear. Intellectual curiosity was somehow beneath our family's social aspirations. When I chose to attend MIT instead of an Ivy League school focused on liberal arts, the family disappointment was palpable. MIT is very technical, my father said carefully. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer somewhere with better social opportunities? I want to study biochemical engineering, Dad. MIT has the best program in the world. But what about networking with the right families? Your education should open social doors, not just career ones. This fundamental disconnect would define my relationship with my family for the next 15 years. The academic years, while Victoria was establishing herself as a prominent young socialite, I was immersing myself in the world of medical research and biotechnology innovation. My undergraduate years at MIT introduced me to professors who were pioneering gene therapy techniques, developing new drug delivery systems, and creating companies that transformed laboratory discoveries into life-saving treatments. Sarah, you should consider the commercial applications of your research, Dr. Elizabeth Chin, my advisor, suggested during my junior year. Academic knowledge becomes powerful when it solves real-world problems. I was working on a project involving targeted cancer therapy, specifically developing nanoparticle systems that could deliver chemotherapy drugs directly to tumor cells while avoiding healthy tissue. The research was groundbreaking, but my family couldn't understand why I was spending 20-hour days in a laboratory instead of building social connections that would benefit my future. Sarah missed the Patterson Charity Gala because she was working on an experiment, Victoria would tell her friends with obvious exasperation. I don't understand why she can't just hire someone to do that kind of work for her. The concept that I might actually enjoy research or that my experiments were leading towards something financially significant never occurred to anyone in my family. During graduate school, I published 12 papers in top-tier journals and won several prestigious research awards, but family conversations still centered around my apparent lack of real-world preparation. When is Sarah going to stop playing scientist and focus on building a career? My mother asked Victoria during one family dinner I couldn't attend due to a conference presentation. I don't think she knows how to do anything else, Victoria replied. She's been in school so long that she's probably afraid of the real world. The company formation, what my family didn't understand was that my playing scientist had evolved into building the foundation for a biotechnology company with revolutionary potential. During my postdoctoral research at Harvard Medical School, I developed a breakthrough drug delivery system that could target specific types of cancer cells with unprecedented precision, while minimizing side effects that made traditional chemotherapy so devastating. The technology was so promising that I attracted attention from venture capital firms, pharmaceutical companies, and medical research institutions around the world. Dr. Morgan, your research has commercial potential worth hundreds of millions of dollars, explained David Rodriguez, a partner at Nexus Ventures who specialized in biotech investments. Have you considered starting a company to develop this technology? I had been considering exactly that, but I also knew that transitioning from academic research to business operations would require skills I had never developed. I'm a scientist, not a business person, I told David. I understand the technology, but I don't know anything about running a company. That's why you build a team, he replied. You provide the scientific expertise, we provide the business infrastructure, and together we create something that changes medicine while generating substantial returns for everyone involved. Within 6 months, I had founded Morgan Therapeutics with $15 million in initial funding, a world-class management team, and exclusive licenses to my research discoveries. But I kept all of this completely secret from my family. Sarah is still doing her research thing, I would tell them when they asked about my career. You know, publishing papers and working in laboratories. Technically, this was true. I was still publishing papers and working in laboratories. I just happened to own the laboratories and the intellectual property that was generating millions of dollars in licensing revenue. The growth years over the next 5 years, Morgan Therapeutics grew from a small research operation into a major biotechnology company with breakthrough cancer treatments in clinical trials. Our lead drug, MT-247, showed remarkable results in treating pancreatic cancer, one of the most aggressive and difficult-to-treat forms of the disease. Early clinical trials demonstrated that patients using our targeted therapy lived significantly longer with far fewer side effects than traditional chemotherapy patients. Dr. Morgan, the Phase 2 trial results are extraordinary, my clinical director reported during one of our weekly meetings. We're seeing tumor reduction in 78% of patients with minimal adverse effects. This could revolutionize pancreatic cancer treatment. The pharmaceutical industry took notice. Major companies began approaching us about licensing deals, acquisition offers, and partnership opportunities that would bring our treatments to market faster than we could manage independently. Meanwhile, my family continued to worry about my apparent lack of financial success and career direction. Sarah is 32 and still living in that tiny apartment near the university, Victoria complained to my mother. When is she going to get a real job and start building wealth like normal people? My tiny apartment was actually a carefully chosen location that allowed me to walk to my laboratories and offices while maintaining the low profile I preferred for security reasons. My lack of real job was actually running a company that employed 127 people and was valued at over $300 million by independent assessors. But I maintained the illusion because I had learned that wealth changes family dynamics in ways that often damage relationships rather than strengthen them. The acquisition offer last year, Pfizer approached Morgan Therapeutics with an acquisition offer that would accelerate our drug development timeline while providing resources to expand our research into other cancer types. Dr. Morgan, we're prepared to offer $847 million for a complete acquisition of Morgan Therapeutics, including all intellectual property, research facilities, and ongoing clinical trials, announced Dr. Patricia Williams, Pfizer's head of business development. The offer was extraordinary, not just for the financial value, but for what it meant about the potential impact of our research on cancer treatment worldwide. Your technology represents the kind of breakthrough that happens once in a generation, Dr. Williams continued. We want to make sure it reaches patients as quickly and effectively as possible. The negotiation process took 8 months, during which I continued my normal routine of family events and social obligations without mentioning that I was in discussions to sell my company for nearly $1 billion. Sarah seems distracted lately, Victoria observed during one family dinner. I hope she's not having money problems again. Maybe Bradford and I should help her find a more stable position. Again, was particularly amusing, since I had never actually had money problems. My family had just assumed I must be struggling financially because I lived modestly and worked in academia. During the final weeks of negotiation, I hired additional security and legal representation, purchased a private jet for secure transportation to confidential meetings, and established offshore accounts to manage the international aspects of the transaction. All of this was handled through intermediaries and shell companies that protected my privacy while ensuring the deal could close without public attention or family interference. The wedding announcement, the sale of Morgan Therapeutics, closed on a Tuesday in April, making me one of the youngest biotech entrepreneurs to successfully exit a company for over $800 million. By Friday, I was attending my cousin Jessica's wedding at the Hamptons Country Club, listening to family members discuss their various business ventures and social accomplishments with no idea that the struggling academic in the corner had just become wealthier than all of them combined. Sarah, you look tired, my Aunt Margaret observed during the cocktail reception. Are you getting enough rest? I know academic work can be very stressful. I'm fine, thank you, I replied, sipping champagne that cost less than what I now made in interest every hour. The wedding was beautiful. Jessica married her college sweetheart in a ceremony that showcased everything our family valued about tradition, elegance, and social status. During the reception dinner, conversation turned to upcoming family events, particularly our annual reunion at my uncle's estate in Martha's Vineyard. This year should be particularly special, announced my cousin Robert, who had organized family reunions for the past decade. Uncle Charles is finally retiring, and we're planning a celebration of his 40-year career in maritime law. The Martha's Vineyard reunion was a Morgan family tradition that dated back 3 generations, a long weekend of sailing, tennis, elaborate dinners, and the kind of social networking that my family considered both recreation and business development. Everyone should plan to arrive Friday afternoon, Robert continued. We've arranged accommodations for immediate family, and there are several hotels nearby for extended family and guests. That's when Victoria made her announcement that changed everything. The public humiliation, well, everyone except Sarah, Victoria said loudly enough for several nearby tables to hear. She's too broke for Martha's Vineyard. The comment was delivered with the kind of casual cruelty that Victoria had perfected over the years, presented as concern but designed to embarrass and exclude. Victoria, my mother said quietly, that's not necessary. Mom, let's be realistic, Victoria continued, warming to her subject. Sarah can barely afford her rent, much less a weekend at Martha's Vineyard. Hotels there cost $400 a night during reunion weekend, plus meals, activities, appropriate clothing. It's just not practical for someone in her situation. I felt every eye at our table turn to me, along with several people from nearby tables who had overheard Victoria's pronouncement about my supposed financial struggles. Maybe we could help with costs, suggested my cousin David awkwardly. Families should support each other. That's very kind, Victoria replied, but Sarah is prideful about accepting help. She'd rather miss family events than admit she needs financial assistance. The conversation was mortifying, not because I was embarrassed about money, but because Victoria was publicly characterizing me as both poor and too stubborn to accept charity from my more successful relatives. I'm sure we can work something out, I said diplomatically, hoping to end the discussion without creating a scene at Jessica's wedding reception. Sarah, there's no shame in struggling financially, Victoria continued, apparently determined to make this as uncomfortable as possible. Not everyone can be successful in business like Bradford and me. Academic work just doesn't pay well. That's when my phone rang with the call that would change everything. Dr. Morgan, came the familiar voice of Captain Mike Harrison, the pilot I had hired to manage my newly acquired Gulfstream G650. Your jet is fueled and ready for departure to Boston whenever you are. Should I file a flight plan for tomorrow morning? I had planned to fly to Boston for a meeting with my investment advisors about diversifying the proceeds from the Pfizer sale, but I had forgotten about the call during the wedding festivities. The entire table had gone silent, staring at me as I held the phone. Yes, Mike, I said calmly. File for a 10 a.m. departure. I'll be there by 9:30. Understood, Dr. Morgan. The crew will be ready. I ended the call and placed my phone back on the table, aware that everyone was waiting for an explanation. Sarah, Victoria said slowly, who is that talking about your jet? My pilot, I replied simply. The questions began. The silence that followed my phone call was so complete that I could hear conversations from tables across the room. Your pilot, my mother repeated carefully, as if she wasn't sure she had heard correctly. Yes. Captain Harrison manages my Gulfstream. We have a meeting in Boston tomorrow. Victoria's face had gone pale. Sarah, you don't have a jet. You can barely afford your apartment. Actually, Victoria, you assumed I can barely afford my apartment. I never said I was struggling financially. My father leaned forward with the expression he used when analyzing complex financial situations. Sarah, private jets cost millions of dollars. How exactly do you afford aircraft ownership? The same way I afford everything else, Dad. Through my work. Academic research doesn't generate that kind of income, Victoria insisted, her voice rising slightly. Universities don't pay professors enough to buy jets. You're right, I agreed. University salaries wouldn't support jet ownership. Then how? Victoria began. I don't work for a university anymore, Victoria. I haven't for 5 years. The confusion around the table was palpable as family members tried to process information that contradicted everything they thought they knew about my life. Sarah, my Uncle Robert said carefully, what exactly do you do for work? I founded and ran a biotechnology company called Morgan Therapeutics. We developed breakthrough cancer treatments. Last month, I sold the company to Pfizer. You sold a company? My mother asked. For how much? I looked around the table at the faces of people who had spent years pitying my supposed financial struggles and academic dead-end career. $847 million, I said quietly. The family reckoning the revelation that I had just sold my company for nearly $1 billion sent shockwaves through the wedding reception that extended far beyond our immediate family table. Victoria was staring at me as if I had announced that I was actually an alien from another planet. That's impossible, she whispered. You live in a studio apartment. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. You wear clothes from Target. I live in a studio apartment because I like the location and privacy. I drive a Honda because it's reliable and doesn't attract attention. I wear Target clothes because they're comfortable and I don't need to impress anyone with designer labels. My cousin David was the first to find his voice. Sarah, are you saying you've been a millionaire this whole time? Billionaire, actually. After taxes and fees, the sale netted about $680 million. Combined with previous earnings and investments, my net worth is approximately $1.2 billion. The number seemed to bounce around the table like a physical object that no one knew how to handle. Billion? Victoria repeated weakly. With a B. Yes, Victoria. Billion with a B. My father, ever the financial analyst, immediately began asking practical questions. Sarah, what kind of biotechnology company generates that valuation? What products were you developing? We created targeted cancer therapy systems, specifically nanoparticle drug delivery that attacks tumor cells while avoiding healthy tissue. Our lead treatment for pancreatic cancer showed unprecedented results in clinical trials. Pancreatic cancer, my mother murmured. That's what killed your grandfather. I know, Mom. Grandpa's diagnosis was part of what inspired my research focus. The emotional weight of that revelation added another layer to the family's processing of my secret success. Sarah, my Aunt Margaret said slowly, why didn't you tell us about any of this? We've been worried about your financial situation for years. Because of this, I gestured around the table at their shocked faces and whispered conversations. because I knew it would change everything about our relationships. Chapter 10. The Martha's Vineyard invitation. As the family absorbed the news about my wealth and success, the conversation gradually returned to the Martha's Vineyard reunion, but with completely different dynamics. "Sarah," my cousin Robert said awkwardly, "obviously you're more than welcome at the family reunion. In fact, maybe you'd like to help with planning or contribute to." "Robert," I interrupted gently, "I appreciate the invitation, but I don't want my financial situation to change how our family operates. I'm the same person I was an hour ago." Victoria was still processing the revelation, staring at me with a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and what looked like dawning respect. "Sarah, I owe you an apology," she said finally. "I said terrible things about your situation without knowing anything about your actual circumstances." "Victoria, you said those things because you made assumptions based on appearances rather than asking about my reality. But why did you let us think you were struggling? Why didn't you correct our assumptions?" "Because I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have. I wanted family relationships based on genuine affection rather than financial interest." The conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing again, this time with a call from my investment advisor. "Dr. Morgan, I apologize for calling during personal time, but we have an urgent opportunity. Tesla is offering a private placement that could be very advantageous for diversifying your portfolio." I excused myself from the table to take the call privately, but I could see family members whispering intensely during my absence. When I returned, the entire dynamic had shifted. People were looking at me with new interest, respect, and, unfortunately, the kind of calculating expressions that suggested they were reconsidering our relationships in financial terms. "Sarah," my Uncle Charles said, "I'd love to discuss some investment opportunities with you sometime. Maritime law has given me insights into some interesting shipping ventures." "That's very kind, Uncle Charles, but I work with professional advisors for investment decisions." Chapter 11. The jet revelation. The next morning, as I prepared to leave for my flight to Boston, Victoria called with an unusual request. "Sarah, I know this sounds crazy, but could Bradford and I possibly get a ride with you to Boston? We were planning to drive up for a business meeting, but if you're flying anyway." The request revealed exactly what I had been trying to avoid: family members viewing my resources as extensions of their own convenience. "Victoria, my jet seats 12 people, but this is a business trip with confidential meetings. I can't bring family members to investment discussions." "Of course, I understand. It's just that flying private must be so much more convenient than commercial airlines." "It is convenient, but it's also a security necessity. When you're worth over $1 billion, commercial travel creates risks that private aircraft help mitigate." The conversation made it clear that Victoria was beginning to understand the practical implications of serious wealth, not just the luxury aspects that she had always associated with success, but the security, privacy, and operational considerations that shaped daily decisions. "Sarah, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you ever feel isolated by having so much money? Does it make relationships complicated?" The question showed more insight than Victoria had ever demonstrated about wealth and its consequences. "Yes, it does make relationships complicated. That's why I've been careful about who knows about my financial situation." "Is that why you've seemed distant from the family sometimes?" "Because you were protecting the secret." "Partly, yes. It's difficult to maintain close relationships when you're constantly calculating whether people like you for yourself or for what you can provide them." Chapter 12. The Boston meeting. The flight to Boston gave me time to reflect on how dramatically my family relationships had changed in the span of a single phone call. Captain Harrison managed the flight with professional discretion, understanding that I preferred minimal conversation during business travel. "Dr. Morgan will be landing in Boston in 20 minutes, he announced over the intercom. "Ground transportation is arranged and waiting." My meeting was with Goldman Sachs Private Wealth Management, discussing strategies for diversifying my assets across different investment vehicles while maintaining liquidity for potential future business ventures. "Dr. Morgan, your exit from Morgan Therapeutics represents a significant liquidity event that requires sophisticated portfolio management," explained Rebecca Chin, my assigned wealth advisor. "We recommend diversifying across real estate, equity markets, private equity, and alternative investments. The conversation was technical and focused on preserving and growing wealth that exceeded the GDP of many small countries. Additionally, we should discuss philanthropic strategies that align with your values while providing tax advantages and social impact, Rebecca continued. I had been considering establishing a foundation focused on cancer research funding, particularly for diseases that affected underserved populations who couldn't afford cutting-edge treatments. I want to ensure that the medical breakthroughs my research enabled reach people regardless of their ability to pay, I explained. That's an admirable goal that can be structured very effectively through charitable foundations and research grants. The meeting lasted 3 hours and involved decisions about hundreds of millions of dollars, a level of financial complexity that most people, including my family, couldn't imagine managing. Chapter 13. The family adjustment. Over the following weeks, I watched my family relationships evolve in response to the revelation about my wealth. Some changes were positive. Victoria began asking thoughtful questions about my research and business experience, showing genuine interest in understanding what I had accomplished rather than just focusing on the financial results. "Sarah, I've been reading about cancer research funding," she said during one of our conversations. I had no idea how much scientific innovation depends on private investment and philanthropic support. Other changes were less comfortable. Distant relatives began reaching out with investment opportunities, business proposals, and requests for various forms of financial assistance. "Sarah, it's your second cousin Mark," read a typical voicemail. "I have an amazing startup opportunity that I'd love to discuss with you. Could we meet for lunch sometime?" My parents struggled with the adjustment more than anyone else, processing years of worry about my financial security alongside pride in my achievements. "Sarah, we're so proud of what you've accomplished," my mother said, "but we feel terrible that you felt you couldn't share your success with us." "Mom, I wasn't keeping it secret because I didn't trust you. I was protecting our relationship from the complications that serious wealth creates." "What kind of complications?" "Like right now, you're worried that you said or did something wrong, when actually you were perfect parents who supported my education and encouraged my interests." The conversation helped my parents understand that my secrecy had been about protecting them from pressure and expectations rather than excluding them from my success. Chapter 14. The reunion decision. As the Martha's Vineyard reunion approached, I had to decide whether to attend and how to handle the new family dynamics around my revealed wealth. Victoria called several times to discuss logistics, but her tone had completely changed from condescending concern to respectful consultation. "Sarah, I know you said you prefer to keep family and business separate, but if there's anything special you'd like to contribute to the reunion planning, please let us know." "Victoria, I appreciate that, but I'd prefer to participate as a family member, not as a financial contributor." "Of course. I just want you to know that we all feel terrible about the assumptions we made about your situation." "I understand, and I appreciate that. But I hope we can move forward focusing on family relationships rather than financial circumstances." I ultimately decided to attend the reunion, but with security arrangements that reflected my actual situation rather than my family's previous assumptions about my resources. Captain Harrison would transport me to Martha's Vineyard and remain on standby for immediate departure if needed. My security team would conduct advance reconnaissance of the venue and maintain discreet protection throughout the weekend. Dr. Morgan, explained Marcus Webb, my head of security, family events can present unique challenges because the environment feels safe and familiar, but your risk profile has changed significantly. I understand. I want to enjoy time with my family, but not at the expense of reasonable security precautions. The preparations for a simple family reunion now involved coordinating multiple professionals and sophisticated safety protocols, a reminder of how dramatically wealth changes even routine activities. Chapter 15. The reunion revelation. The Martha's Vineyard reunion became an exercise in managing family dynamics that had been fundamentally altered by the revelation of my success. I arrived via private jet at Martha's Vineyard Airport, where my security team had arranged discreet transportation to my uncle's estate. "Sarah," my cousin Jessica called out as I approached the main house. "We're so excited you could make it." The greeting was warm and genuine, but I could sense the underlying adjustment everyone was making to their perception of my place in the family hierarchy. Throughout the weekend, conversations took on a different quality. Family members who had previously offered career advice or financial guidance now asked respectful questions about my business experience and research work. "Sarah, what advice would you give to young people interested in entrepreneurship?" asked my teenage nephew during one family dinner. "Focus on solving real problems rather than just making money," I replied. "Find something you're passionate about that also addresses genuine needs in the world." "Is that how you built your company?" "Yes. I was passionate about cancer research, but I also recognized that academic research alone wouldn't get treatments to patients quickly enough. Starting a company was the most effective way to translate scientific discoveries into medical solutions." The conversation evolved naturally into a discussion of education, innovation, and the relationship between scientific research and business applications, topics that engaged the entire family in ways that previous reunion discussions never had. Victoria, who had initially been embarrassed about her wedding announcement, gradually relaxed into a more authentic relationship with me. "Sarah, I realize I never really understood what you were working on all these years," she admitted during a private conversation. "I assumed academic research was just theoretical. Most people don't realize how directly scientific research connects to practical applications," I replied. "The cancer treatments we developed will help thousands of patients live longer, healthier lives." "That's incredible. I'm proud to be your sister." Chapter 16. The new normal. 6 months after the family revelation, our relationships have settled into a healthier dynamic based on mutual respect rather than assumptions or financial considerations. Victoria has become genuinely interested in my philanthropic work, particularly the Cancer Research Foundation I established with part of the proceeds from the company sale. "Sarah, I'd like to help with fundraising for your foundation," she offered recently. "I have connections in the charity circuit that might be valuable for supporting cancer research." "That would be wonderful, Victoria. Your event planning skills and social connections could really benefit our mission." My parents have adjusted to having a billionaire daughter with remarkable grace, maintaining their own lifestyle while understanding that my choices are driven by preference rather than financial limitations. "We're proud of you for staying true to yourself despite your success," my father said. "Money changes some people, but you're still the same dedicated researcher you've always been." The younger family members have embraced me as a role model for education and entrepreneurship, often asking questions about combining academic interests with business opportunities. "Aunt Sarah shows us that being smart can make you successful in ways we never imagined," my niece told her parents. "Most importantly, I've learned to balance transparency about my achievements with privacy about specific financial details that could complicate family relationships or create security risks." Epilogue. The real wealth today, as I continue managing my investments, expanding my philanthropic efforts, and exploring new research opportunities, I'm grateful that my family now understands the difference between struggling and choosing to live modestly. The biotech industry continues to offer opportunities for innovation that could benefit millions of patients while generating substantial returns for investors who understand the potential of medical research. My next venture will focus on developing treatments for rare diseases that affect children, conditions that pharmaceutical companies often ignore because the patient populations are too small to generate significant profits. Dr. Morgan, pediatric rare disease research could be your most important work yet, my research director explained during our recent planning meeting. "You have the financial independence to pursue treatments that other companies can't justify economically. That's the real power of wealth, not the ability to buy luxury goods or impress people with expensive possessions, but the freedom to pursue meaningful work without worrying about immediate financial returns." Victoria now understands this distinction. "Sarah, I used to think success meant having expensive things," she told me recently. "Now I realize that real success means having the freedom to do work that matters." The Martha's Vineyard reunion has become an annual celebration of family achievements across different fields: Victoria's social impact through charity work, my scientific innovations, our cousins' various business and professional accomplishments. But the most valuable outcome of revealing my wealth to my family wasn't increased respect or changed dynamics. It was the elimination of pretense that allowed us to build authentic relationships based on who we actually are rather than assumptions about our circumstances. Sometimes the person who seems to have the least actually has the most. Sometimes the family member everyone worries about is the one secretly supporting breakthrough medical research that will save lives around the world. And sometimes the most successful person in the room is the one who chooses privacy over performance, substance over show, and impact over image. If this story resonates with you, please share it with anyone who's ever been underestimated because they didn't fit conventional definitions of success. Have you ever revealed something that completely changed how people saw you? Share your experiences in the comments below. Remember, true wealth isn't about what you own. It's about the freedom to pursue what matters most to you.